Reach out to them for advice at 855-DON-GINO. And now back to your hosts, Don Getling and Gino Franti.
All right, welcome back to the fourth segment of our Finance Hour with our finest guest of the hour, Mr. Kenny Harris with First American Exchange. And we've been going over some great information that you need to know about, especially if you're invest in properties and or know someone who does. Everybody knows somebody who's a real estate investor, right?
Yeah, and then what's really interesting, and Ken, you can clarify this for me, but you could technically still have some sort of let's say you're in a primary residence that used to be an investment property, but you haven't met the primary residence exemption yet. As long as you lived in it a certain amount of years before, you could still use that as. How does all that work?
Well, your primary residence exemption, you have to live there 2 out of the last 5 years in order to get your exemption. $250,000 if you're single, or $500,000 if you're married. So if you've lived there 2 out of the last 5 years, you can take that, even though you may have had it as an investment property the last 2 years.
So you can do this every 2 years.
Well, you could as your primary residence,
right.
Yeah, I believe, yeah. So, but then we have people that have had it as an investment property the last 2 years, maybe lived in it previous to that, and we call it a mixed-use transaction. Maybe they had a gain greater than their $500,000, so now they're able to exchange a portion of it and take their primary residence exemption, pocket some of the money.
See how smart he is? This is why you need to call Ken, because I know you're sitting up there going, huh?
Yeah.
That's the carrot for the next show. That's what he just did right there.
Exactly.
Again, please join us right here in the Vault Media Studios by going to donandgino.com, donandgino.com, and click and listen, chat live button, and boom, 3 HD cameras are here watching us rock and roll with Mr. Kenny Harris with First American Exchange.
So, as we mentioned, Ken's been promising for the last 3 shows to talk about what happens when there's a seller carryback. So I don't want to waste any more time and let him slip away without telling us that.
I haven't slept for 1.5 years thinking about this time. Seller carryback financing. I think I briefly mentioned earlier, when you do a 1031 exchange, you want to go equal or greater value and equal or greater equity in order to defer all your taxes. So seller financing is basically eats up the equity in the property you're selling. So how do you roll your equity into the acquisition of a piece of replacement property when the equity is rolled up in the form of a note? So it's something to think about prior to going into doing a sale and figuring up for your agents the purchase agreement. Because if you want to exchange and you roll in seller carryback financing, now you're kind of stuck. So the equity rolled up in the form of a note. There's a couple ways to avoid it. One, you could just pay the taxes on the form of in the note. So as you receive the principal balance payments, as you in that year, you pay the taxes on the principal balance you received for that year. So it's kind of a deferral of taxes as it is anyways, because
you're only paying on what you receive, you're not paying on the lump sum.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you could have an interest only seller carryback financing, due and payable in 5 years. They're going to pay their capital gains tax in 5 years. Okay. You could also, instead of using the equity from the sale, I've seen clients fund the money in out of pocket instead of using the equity of the sale. That way all the equity could roll into the exchange for the acquisition or replacement property.
Oh, okay, that's
interesting. So if you have the cash funds, not everybody has the cash funds to do that. So that's another option. The other option is we can take the note into the exchange transaction. We hold on to it, we become beneficiary in it, we receive payments during the term of the exchange. Prior to closing the replacement property, though, we need to figure out what we're doing with that note. So the investor can come in and acquire that note back. The investor can find a third-party investor that wants to buy the note back, deposit the money in the exchange, we assign the note back to them. And then another way that I've actually seen a few times is the seller's willing to take the note as payment towards the purchase price into the replacement property. That way the equity rolled into the acquisition or replacement property. We assign the note back to the seller ends up receiving payments on it, and it's kind of like a down payment or money towards the purchase of replacement property.
Oh, wow. Okay, so if you're driving right now and you just heard all that and you have no clue what Ken just said, I recommend you go to donandgino.com in the next couple of days and listen to it at least 5 times.
Yeah, it's very confusing. It takes a while to wrap your hands around it. I really want people just to know, if you're thinking about exchanging and there's seller carryback financing coming up, call me.
Well, I love that. We call that in many of industries called professional confusion, because you think you know what you know until somebody really explains it and you go, You had me at hello. Just take care of it for me. Because I know when we do a lot of our mortgage financing, we give them 4 different options. They're like, well, just help me figure out which one's going to save me money. Because a lot of times you're only given one option when there might be 3 or 4 different options. You know,
No, actually,
buying a property, you could you don't always have to have mortgage insurance. There's a lot of different ways to get rid of mortgage insurance these days.
You know, that's something interesting that you talked about, and I think you work really closely with CPAs and financial planners to make sure the correct tax strategy is being applied, right?
That's correct. Yeah, we'll work with our CPAs. We want our clients to talk to their CPAs, you know, because it's not up to me to determine if this is worthwhile to them or not. You know, it's up to them, their CPAs, their
Nice disclaimer.
attorneys, and exactly.
We do the same thing. It's important, and it's important you align with those type of people. But bottom line is, you're listening to Ken go through all these different parameters regarding a 1031 exchange when you're, you know, buying and selling investment properties. It's important to talk to an expert to help you make. I mean, the idea of buying an investment property is make money, right?
Exactly.
So why should you give away money to Uncle Sam? That's the bottom line of what this whole conversation is all about, and why you need to reach out to someone like Ken Harris. And again, we can always get you that information, reaching out to Don and Gino at donandgino.com, or you email us at donandgino@gmail.com. Or, Ken, how can they get a hold of you?
Call me, 818-307-0085, or email Harris, Harris, at firstam.com.
All right, that information's up on donandgino.com. Click on the Listen and Chat Live button. Furman's doing a great job making sure all Ken Harris's information is there, because if you're thinking of buying and selling investment properties or exchanging one to another, you need to talk to the man, because he'll help guide you down the right path. With the information he knows, he'll help you make an educated decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's that piece. No wonder we held off for 3 or 4 shows trying to get into that, because it can be complicated.
It is
It sounded very interesting,
I had
though.
to take 2 sips of my Rockstar just to get through it.
It's complicated, but just know
It's
you
possible.
you might not want to intermingle both, but talk to me and we'll explore options as far as how to proceed in exchange if you have seller carryback financing.
I love the interest-only option so that you can defer it that way. I was like,
Yeah,
that's exciting.
Some
That
people
was-
look at that as a deferral, I think, anyways. Even if you don't exchange, if you spread it out over the next 5 years or whatever, it might not be too bad.
It's funny, we hang out with Ken all the time. He's smart.
Oh, wow. I'm going to keep my next comment to myself.
I know. It's a problem when you bring on friends on the show sometimes. And we've had Ken here, you know, it's probably, your 4th time here, I would imagine,
think so,
something like that.
yeah.
You work with our entire team here at Cherry Creek Mortgage. We appreciate the knowledge and the opportunity to have you back, you know, having our backs and our clients' backs, and hopefully, especially you real estate agents out there that are listening, you should reach out to someone like Ken Harris with First American Exchange, because he can be a great team player when you're given the right information. I know we align ourselves with the very best in town regarding escrow, title, and so forth. It's the same thing.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that's really important for real estate agents to recognize is that working with investors creates the opportunity to have multiple transactions, rather than working with homeowners that do transactions maybe once every 5 years or once every 7 years or once every 10 years. Investors tend to be doing things on a regular basis. They tend to buy and sell properties more often than homeowners.
We'll ask our next real estate professional guest if he's okay with doing multiple transactions for the same client.
Yeah, I think he'd say that's just fine.
You want to close multiple deals in 180 days? Yeah, that's usually the draw. I mean, real estate agents love that. And just know, too, I can always, you know, if the real estate agents are out there listening and want their whole office to learn this, I'll come in and speak to them.
And that's smart, because they should know about this. Because what if a client asks you about it, and you're like, I've never heard of that. Is that like, I mean, it's
an easy way to lose a listing.
Exactly. So, Ken, thank you very much again, buddy. One more
you for
time,
having me.
how can they email you? Because that's or go to your website.
My website, I haven't mentioned that. It's firstexchange.com. www.firstexchange.com.
A lot of great
go in
information
there.
on that.
Yeah, you could go through that. There's articles that you could figure out your 45 days, 180 days. But you could go through that. Call me, 818-307-0085, or Harris at firstam.com.
Thanks for sharing great information to help our listeners avoid taxation.
Anytime. It's always my pleasure.
Very cool. Well, stick around. We have an incredible guest coming up. You're going to be entertained and informed by Mr. Michael Waxman with Intero Realty. He is a hoot. We see him all the time. He's a good dude, and you want to get to know Michael when we get back with the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show. Don't go away.